Welcome to Nurses with Voices, the podcast where we amplify the voices of nurses everywhere. I'm your host, Dr. Lenda James, DNP RN, and I am thrilled to go on this podcast journey with you. As a nurse with over 20-something years of experience, I've witnessed dedication, resilience, and passion that defines our profession. Through this podcast, we aim to educate, empower, and inspire nurses at every stage of their careers. Whether you're a novice nurse navigating the challenges of bedside care, an experienced clinician looking to advance in your field, or dreaming of becoming a nurse entrepreneur, Nurses with Voices is here for you. Join me as we delve into topics such as advancing in nursing, mastering leadership skills, and fostering a supportive community within our profession. Together, we'll explore the triumphs, struggles, and countless opportunities that come with being a nurse. So tune in, subscribe, and let your voice be heard, because here at Nurses with Voices, every nurse has a story worth sharing, and every nurse voice deserves to be amplified. Hello, and welcome to Nurses with Voices. I am so excited to be here today. I have such a special guest, and I want to introduce him. He is just spectacular. This is Justin Fontenot, Associate Professor at Tulane University, and I'm going to let him do the introduction for you guys. Justin is just phenomenal. Justin will be he will be one of the panelists at our Health and Wealth Summit. So I'm super excited to have him here today. You guys are in for such a special treat. Justin is just amazing. I love talking with him. I think the first time we talked, it was like we started going on and talking. Felt like I knew him, right? So I am going to go ahead and let Justin introduce himself. I'm sorry, this is Dr. Justin Fontenot, guys. So you guys know I am Dr. Lenda James, founder of DL James Consulting and founder of Nurses with Voices. So we're here today to really just talk about, nursing. Nurses with Voices is really about just what it says, giving nurses that voice. So we're going to talk today with Dr. Fontenot, and I'm going to let him take it away. So tell us a little bit about you. I know I can't do enough in telling and speaking about you. So let us know who you are.
Thank you so much for having me on today, Dr. James. I am Justin. Let's see. I don't necessarily always like talking about myself, so I'll try to do my best. It feels very natural though, talking with you. So I'm happy to be here today. I want to say hello to all of the listeners of the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and just sharing this time and space with us. I am born and raised in Louisiana. I was actually raised in a very, very small community called Ville Platte, which is a very odd name. But it just means flat town in French. We have about, I don't know, maybe, or when I was growing up there, maybe 11,000 people. So very rural area, kind of the place where everybody knows everybody. I was very fortunate to be raised in a family that was very community driven, but also I think like that whole community that I grew up in was just very community driven. So I grew up with a mom who took care of a family, but like also took care of everybody else, right, in the community, like the neighbor, the elder down the street, collecting items for people in the cold, collecting food for people who didn't have it. She was our Boy Scout chapter leader. Like my mother was very active in the community, and growing up in like that environment, I knew like there's no other place for me to be besides nursing. And my mother was not a nurse, right? But something about she could have been, you know what I mean? Like I think she could have been a nurse, but she didn't have those same opportunities because we lived in like a lot of poverty stricken area. She did not finish high school, so she got pregnant with my sister at 15. So she didn't have the same kind of like opportunity that I was fortunate enough to have. So I knew like almost immediately growing up I was going to be a nurse. Also grew up with a big family on my mom's side because we have she has like 8 siblings, right? And so two of my mom's sisters, the two youngest girls, are both RNs, and I grew up fascinated with them or by them, right? Just visiting their house, and they were both like home health nurses. So they had all this like really cool equipment in the house, the blood pressure cuff and that real stethoscope. And I was, introduced to a life of being in service and healthcare at a very early age. So now it's been 24 years that I've been working as a nurse in my community. I took the typical route, right? Because in the late 90s, you were told by your instructor or your teachers or your professors, you've got to go into acute care, you've got to go get your med surg experience, the whole
Do med
spiel, right?
surge. Yes,
Yes.
yes, yeah.
And I did that, right? Like I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I listen. I'm a listener and a rule follower. So I listened and I did med surg and it was great. But I was missing, I was missing something. There was like something not connecting. I was seeing patients in our acute care facilities, and it was the same folks, coming in. And I started, blaming myself. Am I not educating them enough? Like, did I not explain them how to take their insulin? Like, why are they back here with this really high blood sugar? It's only been a week. Not even being cognizant of like the social determinants that drive and impact, healthcare. And I'm just nosy and I take after my mom. I'm gonna go in your house and help you fix it. I'm just gonna take over, right? And so I decided to get into home care and I spent like about 10 years of my career in home care. From all areas. Like people are like, what did you do in home care? Believe it or not, I started as a sales rep, like a sales rep. I was what they called a clinical liaison.
So what's
Uh,
a sales rep? Tell me, what is a sales rep in home care?
yeah, well, so I don't know if people are familiar with it, but like home care is obviously where we deliver care in the home, right?
Right.
But it's you wouldn't believe it, but it's very competitive space. Okay. So, like, if a physician is going to write an order for a patient to go home on home care because maybe they need more IV antibiotics or they need someone to, do their wound care 3 times a week or whatever the situation may be. Maybe they just need education. Maybe they're a newly diagnosed heart failure patient, so they
Mhm.
need help managing their new medication and their weights and all these kinds of things, right? Their sodium intake. So nurses in the home do a lot, okay? And then we do a lot also of managing like social determinants of health and trying to keep patients at home where they belong and not, back in the hospital.
Right.
And so there's, the market that I started working in South Louisiana after I moved away from my hometown. We probably had 10 providers in that town, all vying for the same, business, right?
Right. Right.
So the company that I started working with initially was like, because they approached me and they're like, how about being a salesperson? And I'm like, a nurse, a salesperson? That what? That doesn't make any sense. Tell me more, right? And they were like, look, you've worked in the hospital. You have these connections, right? Like the case managers on your floor. You know people, and you have this like personality. So we want you to go into the hospital you used to work for and we want you to build relationships with the case managers on every floor. And we want you to get them to send us patients that need home care services. So that's what I did.
That's amazing though. That's actually
It was a fun job. Like it
yeah.
was really a fun job because it's not like your typical job, right? And at
Right.
this like point in my life, I was like, I need something that I don't have to punch the clock, right? So I'm
Mhm.
taking
Mhm.
this salary position, which was
Right.
more money I had ever made before in my life. So obviously the money drew me to a certain extent. Like, this is
Right.
great. How did I land into this, world?
Right. Right.
And then it just was so easy too, because I knew people in my community. I
Right.
was very active in my community. It made sense for me to, take this job. And a lot of what I would do, when the case managers would call me, is I would head right up to the hospital and I would copy the chart, and I would get a sense of what was going on with the patient. And then I would go speak with the patient and the family and say, this is what you can expect when you get home, and your
Hmm.
nurse is going to be here at this time, and this is going to be
Right.
your nurse. And like, I coordinated, I kind of was that stopgap. I also
Right.
helped order like DME and
Right.
supplies, and I mean, from everything to the IV tubing to the IV medication, like, I just made it happen, right? I
You
spent my
coordinated all of that.
right.
Nice. Nice.
So it was like really rewarding job,
Okay.
because I got to see patients um doing better, going home.
Hmm.
And then I got to make them feel comfortable about going home, because people are like, how am I going to take care of this by myself at
Right.
home?
Right.
And it's
Right.
like, don't worry, got you. We're going to help you. What a
And like
relief,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To see people just kind of, you see family members who had no experience in healthcare, and all of a sudden their family member was ill and they have to step up to the plate, and
Right.
they're just as scared as, I mean,
Yeah.
imagine having no training as a nurse, but being
Hmm.
put on the floor and said, you go do this
You
work,
go right,
right?
right, 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 right. No, I think that's awesome. So, like, my mind, when you start talking about how you were told you had to go in and speak with all of the case managers, build relationships with them, that's exactly what consultants do, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
exactly. So, my mind always, it just always goes to business when. Because I think about, so, in one of my consulting business, right, I provide a at home service, right? I provide a concierge service. And when we think about taking on one of the goals is to take on the postpartum, I should say, the postpartum moms, right?
Mhm.
And how do we do that? It's really about getting into those facilities, right, and partnering with those case managers so that we can obtain those postpartum moms as clients. Because listen, a lot of the moms are not um and I don't mean this in a mean way, but moms are getting older now. Like, women are taking their power back and they're having babies later in life. And not that when you have them younger you knew any better either, but
Right.
but now that moms are having babies a little later, a lot of them need help because they've been in their careers, right, for the last 20 to 15 years, 10 to 15 years, right? And now they
Yes.
decided to have a baby later. They probably got married later, because a lot of people aren't getting married like before, when they were getting married at 18 and 24. And,
Right.
so now they're a little older and they're having these babies a little later and they do need help. So it's a great opportunity and a great service to be able to provide postpartum postpartum care, to moms as a concierge
Sure.
service. And that's a great point, is making those connections with those case managers so that they can give you the leads that you
Yes.
need,
Yes.
right?
And the awareness that this is available, because a lot of times I was not just what I was called a salesperson. I was also an educator,
Yeah.
right? So a
Yeah.
lot of times I was educating the case manager,
Yeah.
who a lot of times it would be a brand new case manager on the floor that I
Uh-huh.
had to rebuild a relationship with because the other one
Right.
left.
Right.
And this person just came from the floor into this role and has never done case management before. And those
Right.
are my favorite people to deal with, because that's like, they're not jaded, right? So
Right.
they're a clean slate.
Right.
So
Right.
I'd get so excited to say, this is what I can do for you, and this is what I can do for your
Mm-hmm.
patients, and this is what I could do for your families. And
Awesome.
next thing you know, they didn't have that awareness. Now they have that awareness, and who do you think, they're going to call? So I was wildly successful in this job. And I didn't know that I would be, but I was like, this is awesome. And I did that for a while in my home health career. And then
Right.
eventually I was moved up and I stayed on the business development side, which is interesting to be on the business side. And I was working for a very large corporation. They're
Okay.
nationwide.
Hmm.
And I was given an opportunity because I was so successful at my job, they were like, well, we want you to teach other people to do what you do, right? In this broader like region. So I became like a regional vice president, which was great. Now eventually got to the point where I was like, I miss taking care of patients one-on-one, right? Because as a
Okay.
manager at that level, I didn't talk to anyone, right? I was just,
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
interact with case managers anymore. I didn't interact with patients. I felt very disconnected
Mhm.
and ultimately went back to nursing and did field work in the same area. So just seeing patients in their homes as their nurse, not as their salesperson,
Right. Right.
taking care of their needs, kind of flip-flop between home care and hospice, get a little too like connected and emotional with hospice and I need a little break. So I'll kind of go back and forth for a while. And then eventually I kind of toyed with the idea of maybe I should go back to school.
Okay.
Um, because school for me, I feel like I've always been kind of, just naturally smart, but
Okay.
school was hard, because I also was kind of like ADD a little bit and
Hmm.
grew up in the 80s, So if you know anything about that, if you're like one of the 80s kids here, you know that like moms back then are very different, as you mentioned, from
Very
moms
different.
today. And my
Very
mother was
different.
very much like ADD is a behavioral thing. That's just somewhat, it needs maturity and self-control and all these kinds of things. Medicine was just not ever going
It
to be.
wasn't. It wasn't, and it's so funny that you say that because I actually tease my mom, to your point. And yes, I am an '80s baby. Yeah.
Without saying
So
our ages, yes.
right, right. So I did. Let's say I grew up in the '80s,
Uh-huh.
and but to your point, that's it's a real, and I actually have a real conversation. I actually had a real conversation with my mother recently about mental health and just speaking about how back then there was no well, and actually technically, and I have a friend of mine, a really close friend of mine. She specializes in autism, and I think if I'm saying this correctly, I think like 20 years ago they didn't even diagnose autism, right?
Right.
So
Have a
so
name
back.
for it. Yeah.
Right. So you have a generation of individuals who went undiagnosed. And then when you think about schizophrenia, when you think about bipolar, or, they didn't diagnose children
Mhm.
appropriately either, right? So, you have a generation that went undiagnosed and untreated. And so it's a problem in our society. And one thing I can say that came out of COVID, it did bring and help the recognition of mental health,
It did.
right? it
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 did.
it brought a huge recognition of mental health, which is huge and is so needed
Yeah.
because we need to stop looking at it at how our parents and grandparents did. They looked at it as a taboo, like it was something. It was like leprosy, right?
Yes.
Like you didn't have nothing's wrong with you. You
Yes.
just need to go outside and run around,
That's right.
or
That's right. Or just
you know
learn to behave yourself,
or
right?
learn to right. It wasn't recognized appropriately, and they didn't know. It's not, they didn't know, right? Like they didn't know.
Not blaming them, right? It's
Right,
just
right. Like they
medical
really
we
did.
know medical advances have we've come a long way with mental
We've come
health.
a long way. The
And
education, the
mind you,
literature, the resources. We can
right?
look at things are right at our fingertips now, right? With they,
Internet,
they had to have the encyclopedias. Remember, they everything was at the library. Had to check the library books out. We're really talking about the '80s now, right?
right. That's right. That's right. Hell, even when we had internet and internet was just starting, my family couldn't afford that anyway, right? And
Right.
my grandmother would have never allowed a computer in her house. I don't care how much you tried to sell her on that. That was not a thing. That was not coming into her house. to a lot of people in that generation, that stuff is scary. Like, oh no,
Yeah.
computers take over the world. We don't need all of this, like that kind of thing, right? And even today, I'd say we still have a lot of work to do in
Oh
terms
yeah.
of mental
Oh yeah.
health, but we are understanding it a little bit better. And
Right.
and I mean, I know that there are several people who are kind of in my situation who just learned to manage certain things that truly is a disorder, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
I waited a very long time to go back to school, personally, because it was fearful for me.
Right.
Undergraduate nursing education can be very traumatic. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we just got to put that out there
Yep.
and make that really
Mm-hmm.
clear.
Yep.
And if you've been through nursing education and you're listening, you know
You.
exactly what we're talking about. And as a nurse educator today, which is where I find myself now, I'm the first one to not forget that, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
because what I came to know was that when I allowed myself and I built up enough confidence to say, because here I am, I have a pretty successful career. I have an associate degree in nursing. I've been in leadership positions. I haven't really experienced any like lack of opportunities. So why would I really go back to school? But I
Right.
just had it, this goal, like I want to get a 4-year degree one day because no one in my family, believe it or not, like no one in my family had a 4-year degree at that time.
Wow.
And I'm
Okay.
talking, I've got 20 something first cousins. I've got, you know, 3 siblings,
Right.
aunts and
Right.
uncles galore, and we all, most of us have high school diplomas. My aunts had associate degrees in nursing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I need to get our first degree, right? So I built up enough confidence, and surprisingly, they treated me different, right? I didn't feel like undergrad,
Okay.
it didn't feel like pre-licensure, I should say. It
Right.
was, you're a working adult nurse, we
Right.
understand, this is
Mm-hmm.
what you need
Mm-hmm.
to know. And I immensely enjoyed my BSN education.
Okay.
It really, it opened my eyes. Not, and people say, well, it doesn't help you to be a better clinician. No, it really doesn't. But what it did do is it opened my eyes beyond just being a clinician, right? It kind
Right.
of helped me understand leadership theory and what it means to be a leader. It
Mm-hmm.
really helped me to understand a more heavy emphasis on public health and community, and that's right up my alley. Like I really enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am working in the community, right? I'm right alongside of my neighbors in their homes,
Right.
working directly with people in the community. And I'm like, this is cool. And then what I really, really loved was research. For
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, and I can remember we'd have to, go in the library and look up articles and, write papers about, the presence of Claudie and all this stuff, right? And I remember reading these journal articles that I would get in the library, and I'd say to myself, who writes like this? Like, who wrote this? Like, who are these people? Right. And
Okay.
I never in my wildest imagination would think that I would be there one day, right? But after the BSN, I was like, okay, I learned a lot. I wonder what a master's might look like. Now I'm
Okay.
really pushing the limits, right? Because no one in my family has a master's, so it's like, and I always heard people with a master's, and I looked up to them like they were like something like abnormal or out of this world,
Yep.
I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try this. Extremely fearful of failing, but having a little more confidence after, doing a fairly good job in my bachelor's
Mm-hmm.
program. And so I got my master's in nursing leadership, and that really continued to drive my passion for writing and reading research and trying to understand research. And of course, you finish the master's and you go, why stop now? Let's just get this doctorate done,
Going. Yeah. Keep
So
going. Keep
I
going.
chose the DNP because I really thought I was going to be in clinical practice as a leader. So I did, the executive leadership kind of like
Mhm.
track. Um, and then I got out and well, actually, as a master's prepared nurse, someone had mentioned that I could teach, and I thought, What? That's so odd. So I started adjunct, in a clinical setting, and I did my first semester, and I said, okay, I found where I really need to be. Like, this is where I really
Love
need
it.
to be, you know?
Right. I love
And
it.
when I got my doctorate, I went full time, and then I really, as a academic, and really started to build up my CV and my career. Had some really great mentorship. Still have some really great mentorship along the way.
Mhm.
Never thought that I would be highly published. Never thought that I would be a researcher. Never thought that I would be halfway through a DNP to PhD bridge program. And I absolutely never thought that I would be sitting in the editor-in-chief chair of an academic journal. I mean, I shattered all of my dreams, and I'm still kind of in disbelief, to be honest with you. So that's just kind of me in a nutshell, a little bit.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So I love how, we gave so much emphasis in the beginning, right? And then you just kind of brushed over, like, I never thought I would, be a writer. I never thought I would be an editor. Like, wait, we need to talk about this. So tell me a little bit about your editor roles. Tell me about what's one of your favorite articles that you've written. Let's start there.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's such a great question. So one of I think my favorite articles, as I was becoming or developing myself into a writer and a researcher, one of the areas that fascinated me was, what does entry to practice look like? So, what are like the barriers to coming to nursing school? Because I encountered my own set of barriers, and here I am, encountering barriers, but still having all this privilege as a phenotypically presentable white person, right? Even though my family heritage is both Native American and European, I've benefited from the privilege of being a white male, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But still, there were barriers to entering practice. So I can't imagine, and so it's understandable why we see a lack of diversity in the nursing workforce,
Right.
because you really have to be set up, right? Like, your family has to set you up. You have to have like that generational knowledge, that generational wealth. If you want to be at the top of your game in nursing, generally you're going to have all these resources, because if you don't, it's not that you can't get there. I'm living proof of that, right? But it's just going to be a lot harder, and it's going to take a
Right.
lot more work, and it's going to, so I got initially very interested in, how do we accept people into the nursing programs? And I started getting really interested in holistic admissions, and I started getting interested in, how do we change, because we change diversity of the entire workforce in nursing school, because that's where it starts. So it's
Right.
about who we're accepting, right?
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
all we're accepting is white females, then our workforces continue to reflect white female, right? And it still does today. So we're still not doing a good job with it, right? And I can talk all day about holistic admissions, because even though many schools have them, there's a lot of problems with it. And so that brings me to this one article written by someone who I fangirl over just a little bit, but her name is and she has ties to Louisiana, which is interesting. But she's in California. She
Hmm.
works for. No, I'm not gonna. Don't even get me to lie, because I can't. It's Stanford. It's Stanford Research.
Okay. Okay.
So her name is Dr. Michelle DeCoux Hampton,
Hmm.
and she sent this article to the journal, where she flipped the weighting, because when we look at holistic admissions, we put weight to certain areas of achievement, right? So there might be a weight for, if you have 3.0, that's 75% of the weight to get in if you have a 3.0 GPA, right?
Okay. Okay.
But then, holistically speaking, we're supposed to look at people's, outside of just their standardized testing ability. We're looking at, do they have experience in healthcare, right? Like,
Right.
are they a CNA? Are they a unit secretary? Are they just, are they a caregiver? Did they care for
Right.
their mother? Did they care for their father?
Right.
And there's a certain amount of weight that goes with that lived experience, but it's
Right.
small. So what she did, which was really cool, is she got an ADN program in California to give her access to I believe it was 90 something applicants that were turned down for admission,
Okay.
analyze their actual performance, but she flipped the weight. So she said, well, if we don't look so much at the GPA and we look more at their healthcare experience, what they've done, their caregiving experience, what would that look like? And when she adjusted the weight and re-looked at it, all of the applicants in that pool who were non-white were all of a sudden ranked at the top if the weights had been switched. And that article I push all the time because it's so important.
Right.
If we're really going to talk about diversifying our workforce,
Yes.
then we're going to need to start with how we let people into our profession, right?
I love it. I love it. I love
It's a
it.
great article. You got to read.
What's the name of it? Share the name of the article.
I'll get the name of it. I can't
Okay.
remember
And
right
that's fine
away.
because I will, when you send me the name, and I'll make sure when this post, I'll make sure that I'll have it in the description. So
And
this
look,
is great.
I have it right here. I'm going to tell you. If you don't mind me just pulling it up, but it's she has one article about nursing program admission barriers in the United States. And then she has another article that specifically talks about holistic review in nursing programs. And the one that came to my journal that we published with a quickness is called Impact of Rubric Weight on Holistic Admissions for Underrepresented Students in Nursing.
Nice. I love it. I love
And
it.
that's just one of my favorite articles. Like I have a lot more, but like that is really one. Right now, I'm really enjoying the articles that are coming in about that new thing we're dealing with today, which is generative AI or generative artificial intelligence. So we're starting to see a lot of excitement and anticipation.
So let's talk a little bit about that, right?
Yes.
Because I know you're going to be talking about this at the summit, which I'm so excited about. And I really, really, really want people to tune in. I think every time I mention artificial intelligence, people's eyes just light up.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about why you think there's such a like an enthusiasm when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Many reasons, right? But like I think main reason is just like with any other new technology. We just as humans enjoy technology, right? Because especially, and just think about like America, right? America is no longer the type of place that is kind of just laid back and we take our time with things, right? We live in a society today where it's like, we need this and we need it now, right? And that causes a lot of problems for us because as Americans, we're also just juggling like work-life balance too. Well, I want to be efficient at work, but I don't want to be working all the time. And I need to balance my family with, and I think when AI, because AI is not really new, right? So when we talk about AI, which I could talk about all day, we talk about things like Alexa or, Siri on your phone or whatever.
Right.
And those are AI, right? And remember how excited we were about those? Like, oh my God, the world was a fire with, Amazon.
Alexa. Yeah. Turn on my lights. Yeah.
Google Home, turn on, lock my doors.
Right.
It was just something new, something exciting. And the biggest thing is it simplifies and it makes our life just a little bit easy. It allows us, if we can if we can be spending time with our families and delegate something to a computer that does a pretty dang good job at it, well, we're gonna do that, right?
Right.
But generative AI is just new. It's new, right? I have a friend who's kind of behind on things, and we were talking one day, and I have a generative AI app on my phone,
Right.
and something came up, and I said, let me look this up with Chat GPT. And she goes, what is that? I heard about that. I don't know what that is. So I have it pulled up, and I'm showing her, and I'm typing it in, and she goes,
Right.
wow. And so
Wow. Exactly.
so about every week she texts me and she goes, you 100% changed my life with it. And that's seriously why people are interested and engaged, because it does have the potential to change life as we know it.
It does.
And on the flip side of that, it's also kind of scary for us, right?
See, and that's where a lot of conversation comes into play when we talk about AI, right? Because to your point, so did you, and I'll use this as an example, there was something that was playing on the news about how there was an AI voice that was mimicking Biden, right?
Yes.
The president, right? So when we think about those type of, when we were talking earlier about how our parents, right, how they didn't believe in certain things, they want no parts in AI. Let me tell you. like right, they want nothing to do with AI. They don't believe in it. They don't want it. Like, don't you mess around with that AI. Like, you better leave that AI alone, right? Like, so it can
and
be
very true.
Yeah. And there was another incident, how I think they're calling like older, that they're kind of targeting the older generation, and they're calling them, and they're sounding like the grandson or someone, and asking them to send money. And so there are definitely cons, right? And I think with anything, however, this is a great technology. And when you think about for nursing, like what are some of your views how AI has really helped to enhance nursing?
Well, that's a complicated question, because I think I think it has the potential, right?
Right.
I mean, we can see it. We can
Right.
see that. Like, I
Right.
remember when it first came out, we were all impressed that it could pass the medical board examination, right? And we're just like mind blown. Wonder what it could do with the NCLEX, right? So like we have all these thoughts. And while all of that is great, there's also like this side of AI that it is not a human, it's a machine. And
Right.
nursing, we pride ourselves on critical thinking,
Mhm.
thinking through that. When you
Right.
think, I used to teach a lot of students, specifically in the community college that was coming back, had their LPNs were coming back for their RNs, and they go, I don't really see the distinction. So I had to work really hard to try to teach them that the distinction is not in what you do, because we know you can do your job. You're great at your job, right?
Right.
We know you can do the skills. We know you can think through things. But that very high order cognitive thinking that's going on all the time is really the skill of the RN that you don't see, the things that you don't know, right?
Right.
And that's
Right.
because of the depth and breadth of our education, right?
Right.
But when what happens is a computer can't do that. A computer can't reason. We can reason. And that's my specific area of interest in research, is just our ability, nurses' ability to reason, and how do we promote reasoning ability. Computers can't do that for us. So there's going to be some bias. There's going to be some things that are not going to be great for us, right? But here's what the point that right now, as excited as I am about AI, and as wonderful as I've found lots of different uses for it in nursing research, and not so much in clinical practice because I don't work in that area, but I see I see the capability and the promise of it. But here's what's really important. There's so many unknowns. There's so much doubt. There's so many things that go with AI that we need to get a good grasp on. And my biggest fear and my biggest issue is that nurses won't be at the table for these conversations.
Right. Right.
And that's where my focus is right now.
I love it.
We need a nurse everywhere AI is going to be implemented in a patient care setting. And we need a nurse to approve that before it even happens. And we need a nurse who's putting those appropriate barriers around that technology.
Yeah.
We can't leave it up to IT. We can't leave it up to computer science. Okay.
Right.
We can't leave it up to engineering. Those are great disciplines. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But nursing has to have a big role in this. And my fear with AI primarily, as wonderful as, if you Google my name, you're going to find podcasts, you're going to find episodes, you're going to find blog posts on American Journal of Nursing, you're going to find articles in Journal of Nursing Administration, you're going to find editorials all by me on the topic of AI.
Love it.
So people
I
like to
love
say,
it.
oh, you're like this AI expert. No, I'm just showing us the power of AI because I've been playing around it a lot.
Right.
But all of those things is not going to put nursing at the policy making table, and we have to be there. So right now, my focus when it comes to AI is figuring out how nurses have a voice in AI implementation, because we don't right now.
I love it. It's similar to nursing informatics, right? When I'm thinking of, remember when they first started rolling out,
EHRs.
electronic documentation, right? And they realized that a nurse was needed because we were getting these electronic documentations and we were like, who created this? Well, what
This
about
doesn't make sense, right?
nothing was making sense. Yeah, well, what about this clinical assessment? What about this? And nothing was making sense. They started incorporating nursing, right, into the electronic documentation, and now it flows. It makes more sense, and
That's right.
because there wasn't anything before. So to your point, I hear what you're saying. Same concept with AI. I absolutely agree with you, and I cannot wait to hear your presentation at the Health and Wealth Virtual Summit. Oh my gosh, it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yes.
They have such an amazing. Oh, they have they have such a treat in store. So
I can't wait. I can't wait.
So exciting, so exciting. I really want nurses to come out and really enjoy this. This is going to be a free virtual event. It's a 2-day event, a free virtual event to just really come out, be educated, be inspired, you're going to be able to see mentors, you're going to see experts like, my friend Justin here, like it's going to be amazing. So tell people how they can find you. Tell people if they wanted to contact you, how can they contact you?
So I stay a lot on Twitter, but I'm pretty much on every social media. It's not even called Twitter anymore. It's like X, but
Right.
you can find me there. I do when I get a chance. But there you can find me at Nurse Justin RN. And on LinkedIn, you can just search my name, Justin Fontenot. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and X. Those are my two areas. Although I love TikTok. I don't post. I just scroll. I'm the scrolling type. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, those are two good places. I'm so excited about our summit. I really hope we gain some interest among nurses with AI, particularly people who can see themselves in positions that can guide AI policy from a nursing perspective, because that's how we get things started. We don't have an AI degree. We have an informatics degree, but we don't have an AI degree. We're going to need one, and we're going to need people to build it, right? So the summit could call the interested people, because it's going to take more than me, right? It's going to take a whole team of our voices.
Right. And I can see you leading the charge on that. I really, really, really do.
I don't know about that. Maybe so. Let me get through this PhD.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I know, and you will, you will. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you. I know when they tune into the Health and Wealth Summit, they're going to be absolutely blown away by your presentation. You mentioned to them how to reach you, to contact you. So I love it. I love it. All right. So, all right, guys. So you guys make sure you tune in for the next episode of Nurses with Voices. That is Tuesdays at 2 p.m. every week, coming to you. We are on Eastern Standard Time, so I better make sure I say that right. All right, guys, I will see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.